Thank you so much, guys, for being with us today. I want to introduce you guys, Praveen Penmetsa. He's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder. And we've got Mark Schwager, who is the president and co-founder. And we've got Carlo Mondavi, who's the Chief Farming Officer, which I initially thought was the Chief Financial Officer because it's CFO, but you're the Chief Farming Officer. So thank you guys so much for being with us here today. We're really excited. We reported on the Monarch tractor a few weeks ago on Tesla Time News when you guys announced the unveiling of it. And it was a complete shock to Jesse and I. We followed the news pretty closely, and we were like, how did this happen? How did this sneak by us? Because we've got hundreds of people around the world who are feeding us news stories all the time. So were you in some kind of stealth mode?
So Zach, yeah, we've been in a stealth mode for the last couple of years as a company. The reason for that is, farming and agriculture, the customers are very demanding about how robust the solutions are. And we didn't want to be one of those technology companies that comes out there, makes a lot of news without having the product or the tech to back it up, and also the product being ready for deployment. So we've been in stealth, field testing with customers, out in the field with our AI engineers, testing our tractor. And finally in December, we were confident enough and we felt like we were at the right place and the right time to kind of announce and launch the company, Monarch Tractor. And that's when we had our public launch. So our tractor is classified as a compact tractor. The fantastic thing about being an all-electric, driver-optional data hub of a tractor is we get to take advantage of all the torque that the electric platform has. So our tractor is equivalent to like a 70 horsepower diesel tractor, number one. The second thing is on the driver optional side, our tractor also has the capability to remove the driver from the seat and be able to run the operation without the driver if the farmer so wants. So for certain dangerous applications, Carlo likes to talk about how spraying with certain chemicals is not great for the driver's health. Those kind of operations, we can do that without the driver in the seat. Thirdly, we also collect data. We have cameras, we have a micro weather station on the tractor. So the farmer not only gets the benefit of diesel savings, sustainability impact, labor savings from having his tractor driver manage 3 to 5 tractors or more versus driving one tractor, being more effective. But also he gets the data of knowing what the tractor is doing, how was the operation happening, and what does my field look like on a daily basis.
From a stature standpoint, it's a very, very narrow tractor. So our overall width is just 1.1 meters, which allows it to fit in just about any farming ecosystem that it could possibly be used. The battery size we don't really go into. It's a massive battery. I would say bigger than anything you would find in a roadworthy electric car today. But we don't think about it in terms of range. Mileage is not our target. Hours of operation is our target. So the specs that we need from a discharge standpoint are elevated but continuous. So you can think about battery discharge in the 0.1 to 0.2 C operating range of where we need to be all the time. Unlike a car, which you're constantly peaking out at 10C when you have to accelerate and things like that. So we have a completely different dynamic on how our battery needs to be used. Some of the other specs that I think are interesting is that we have built our tractor around the infrastructure that farmers have available. And that means level 2 charging rather than DC fast charging. I don't know too many farms that have that level of power just available for their existing operations that they have today. And one of the great things that we've done as a company is we've fit our product into the existing ecosystem. That 220 volt plug that they have in their barns, that's usually used for welding, and that's perfect for level 2 charging. One other quick thing is that you think about a big battery and level 2 charging, it must take a long time to charge. It takes about 4 or 5 hours. But for farmers, you can't say, hey, you have 4 to 5 hours of downtime. So our battery is actually swappable, which allows farmers to change a battery in 10 minutes with one person in the middle of the field. It doesn't need to be perfectly flat or anything, and so you can imagine how much a massive battery weighs. And so this is just a feat of incredible engineering that our team has come up with in order to focus on the farmer's use case that allows them to operate continuously.
Wow. Okay, so a couple of things Jesse and I were talking about before this interview. We were like, would it be possible for a farmer to put solar on the roof of the barn and basically kind of go off grid, so to speak, so that they never had to, go to a diesel fueling station again? I mean, basically they could just plug in the tractor during, off times when they're not using it and be able to operate it all the time. Is that feasible?
It is feasible. What we find is that farmers typically use compact tractors 100 days per year. So without investing in stationary storage, there are days where you could use a solar roof and charge the tractor entirely. That is possible. I think in order to deal with any sort of variation in how the weather chooses to reveal itself, investing in stationary storage is probably the better way to go in addition to the solar system, but we definitely see that as possible. Our company, though, we are focused on the tractor first. We will be working with partners on solar and stationary storage deployments, but we see that as the future. And actually, one step beyond that is really where we see the future, because essentially land can perform double duty, meaning that you can grow crops in the ground and then you can have solar panels above them, especially in vineyards where you can combine usage of the stanchions that actually hold the vines in place with a little bit extra height. They can become a base for panels. And agrivoltaics is just in its infancy right now, but that's really 20 years down the line where we see the world.
It's really exciting because we have a couple customers that have some farms that are $250,000 away from, that's how much it would cost for them to pipe electricity. And so right now they have diesel tanks there. They want to get rid of fossil fuel farming and go to renewable energy resources for farming. And so they say, well, instead of paying $250,000 to get electricity to this 500-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere, we're just going to build a solar barn. And we've been working with them on developing that. So taking the money there, getting rid of the fossil fuel tanks, so no more diesel. And now not only are they paying, they're skipping paying for electricity from the grid. They're going straight to renewable, a second crop from the farm, and able to capture that. So we actually have a couple customers right now. Same family, but two large acreage farms or ranches that we're working on building solar barns to address exactly what you brought up, which is really, really exciting.
That's so cool. I mean, if you and I were to have a farm, I think we would automatically want an electric tractor. But I got to imagine that the average farmer out there, as much as they might want an electric tractor, is going to ask this one question, which is, okay, how much does it cost? And is it going to be economical for me? So when we were looking at this tractor, I went online and I was looking at some comparable tractors, and I saw that I probably could get a diesel tractor a little bit cheaper. So tell me, if I'm a farmer looking to get a Monarch, why should I go with a Monarch?
So one of the big exciting things is the cost is actually really, really reasonable, and it's kind of in the middle too. The tractors that I personally run on my ranch right now cost like $70,000, so we're $20,000 less than those. And then there's the diesels that are about $30,000 that come in kind of at the base level. Monarch offers so much more in terms of being able to capture data, being electric. The savings on being electric is immense. It's something like $45 per day, and when you add that up times the days that the tractor's needed and the amount of tractors that are needed for a farm, the savings just jump. And that's just being electric.
And Zach, on the electric car world, we are used to looking at our commutes on a daily basis, looking at how much fuel we save and how much of dollars that is, right? We're used to running that calculator. We do the same thing for farmers. Is we look at their operations and say, which operations are you running? How much are you running those? And what's happening these days is, due to the growth of organic food sales, which requires farmers to use less chemicals, they have to do more mechanical operations. So the usage of the tractor is actually increasing. You cannot spray something and kill it. You'll have to run a tractor to either cultivate it or mow it, right? So you're running more hours on the tractor. So we run a calculator for them, which is available on our website. where farmers can select the number of drivers they have, the number of tractors they want to buy, how many hours they use a tractor, and see the dollars and cents in terms of savings. And it's immense. It's even more compelling, Zach, from electric car standpoint, right? We're used to seeing 4 or 5, 7 years, depending on your commutes for electric cars. With our farmers and the way our tractor is designed, we are looking at like 18 months to 3 years for complete payback of the tractor cost without any subsidy, which is just like amazing value for farmers who are trying to save everywhere they can these days.
So let's talk about the tractor itself. You said it has 70 peak horsepower. How does that stack up compared to most compact tractors?
Our tractor is basically one size smaller than our competitors in terms of the dimensions, and in terms of horsepower is one size higher. So when we talk about our competitors, we are looking at outpacing them in terms of torque. We have like 1.5 times to 2 times the torque of our competitors. We are narrower than them, and we have much better specifications in terms of the kind of operations we can do from a PTO horsepower, like how many implements can be run, what power does the implement support, etc. All of that, we outclass them across the board. The only number that we take, we don't beat them on, is currently the weight of the tractor. The weight is more due to the weight of the batteries. But what we have done is we have turned that into our advantage. What we have done is we have put the weight of the batteries very low in the tractor, just like we see in electric cars. And even more importantly, we have moved that weight towards the front of the tractor. And Carlo will tell you, a lot of the tractors, you will see these weights in the front of the tractor that the farmers add on, right? They're trying to balance the tractor because they're running a heavy implement in the back. So what we have done is we have taken that extra weight, which could be seen as a disadvantage, and turned it into an advantage by making the tractor more stable and telling the farmers, you don't need to add any weights to the front of our tractor. We already have biased the weight of our tractor towards the front so you can run those implements. So from a specification standpoint, Jesse, we beat them on all the performance numbers, and the one number that we don't, in reality, we are actually better than our competitors even in that sense.
Because, the weight isn't going to affect cornering. It's not a race car.
Yeah, but it does affect stability, right? And Jesse, one other thing is we have a couple of secret features that really make this thing, a mind-blowing value proposition for farmers, right? As number one, we have built-in genset capabilities that we have not talked about. Our tractor, we use the battery system that Mark talked about to power things out in the field. So we have a built-in AC inverter, and you can run up to 10 kilowatts of it, which means you can run a welder in the middle of your field. You might have seen that in some of our videos. So that's a feature that none of our competitors have, not even close. The second thing is also the fact that our tractor is safer because of all the active systems that we have. It's the difference between driving a car from the 1960s and driving a modern car in terms of safety. We will tell the driver when there's a high probability of rollover, when the inclines are too high. We can see when somebody is getting too close to the implement in the back, which are dangerous when you're running them. So our tractor is the safest tractor out there from a competitive standpoint. When I say out there, I mean in the whole world.
So for non-farmers, let's just talk about the PTO and implements for a minute. So PTO is not parent-teacher organization. We're talking about the kind of on the back of the tractor, there is I don't know the proper term because I'm not a farmer.
Power
transfer.
Yeah, power takeoff.
What that allows you to do is take the power of the tractor and give it to something that the tractor is pulling behind it. So the implement.
Basically, the tractor's job is to navigate and provide power. The implement is responsible for actually doing the work. And so the way that ecosystem works today is it's primarily hydraulics and PTO driven. And the way that actually works today is someone kind of flips the PTO on and off. Basically, you don't want to spray when there's not something to spray. You don't want to mow when there's not something to mow. So that's very mechanically controlled. What we've done with our platform is we've integrated a number of technologies into that implement interface, so that that PTO on-off can be something that's automated based on vision technology and things like that. Based on remembering the routes and the operations that the tractor needs to do. Hydraulics are actually, we have pioneered hydraulics that are by-wire controllable, which is something that's very unique to our platform. And the third is we are beginning to work with implement companies that want purely electrically driven implements. And the reason that we need to do that is for efficiency. Right now, if you have a long mechanical system with a lot of losses, that doesn't really hold up that well for electrification. It holds up way better with our tractor without, an engine and a transmission as energy losses. But still, there are much more efficient ways to perform the operations that we need to do. And the implement ecosystem for pure electrically driven implements is, again, another thing just in its infancy, but with our tractor, the full capability and the full efficiency of that system is something that we can achieve together with the implement partners that we're working with.
Because, if we go back in time to, say, like 1921, how are you going to power an implement? Well, you have the engine on the tractor. It's going back to something that can spin, but there's no way to electrically power anything because your power box is an engine. But now, because you have a giant battery in your tractor, you can really change the way you do implements. You don't have to be like, okay, the power coming in is a spinning thing. How can we turn the spinning thing into whatever operation we want to do? You could, I'm assuming, plug into that outlet and do whatever you wanted, right?
Exactly, Jesse. That's exactly the vision that we have as well. And what we are looking at there is, kind of like Mark said, building up that whole ecosystem of implements. And Carlo's already been talking to a number of implement companies that are very excited about using their electric version of their implements with our tractor.
Now, I feel like you just talked about that you have some secret features. I feel like one of your most secret features is actually one that you're very public about, which is that this is an autonomous tractor. Because when I first saw the tractor, I just focused on the fact that it was electric. And then it kind of hit me when I saw there was no one driving it, that you have an autonomous tractor. And I think a lot of farmers are going to have trouble with this feature because they're not going to know what to do with it. Just like we had trouble when Teslas could start to drive themselves. A lot of people are like, I'm never going to use that feature. And so I'd like you guys to talk to that farmer out there who's like, I don't even know what you want me to do with this autonomous tractor.
One of the biggest things about Monarch tractor is that we're able to take the whole carbon footprint of the conventional farm, make that go away, take the whole carbon footprint so we're bridging the carbon footprint, if you will. So you can do the extra passes without burning the diesel. And then on top of that, you're able to get rid of chemicals. So we're going to make clean farming not just economically viable, we're making it economically superior to conventional farming.
So Zach, Carlo touched upon a great point about the farm economics that's driving the adoption of the autonomy features you just talked about, right? Like, you're already in the car, so I can understand the friction of you trusting the autopilot or the autonomous drive features in a car. But I've done a lot of development in my past life on on-road autonomous vehicles. And the interesting thing that happened when I started work, when we all got together and started doing autonomy for the farm, is very often they're going down a row. They're doing an operation and you're driving down a long row, usually at night, running an operation like a spray operation, or you're doing other operations like cultivating and mowing. So these are like very, what we call dirty, dangerous, dull kind of operations. So there is an incentive for both the tractor driver and the farm owner to remove this person from the seat. And also, we also understand that there's going to be a friction point. There's going to be an adoption timescale for our technology, which is why ours is the only tractor that supports this driver optional feature, which means if they're not comfortable, jump on board. It works like a tractor. It's easier to drive than a normal tractor. You can still do your operation. And for certain operations, if you don't want to use our driver optional feature, you can put your driver on it. So it's a good gateway and a good bridge for getting farmers used to these autonomous features.
I feel like when we talk about electric cars, a lot of times we say butts in seats. We got to get your butt in the seat to experience the EV. But I feel like here we need a new saying, like, I don't know, farmers on porch or something, where it's like, we need to get you just relaxed for a minute and just watch your tractor doing the job so that it'll click in your head of like, oh, that's what an autonomous tractor means. And I think we also need a new label. We have organic labels for our foods, but I feel like we now need like a organically tractor farmed label or something. I don't know, like we need to go one step further because we haven't really taken this into account yet.
Yeah, that's a great point, Zach, and that's what we tell our farmers too, is we want to get you, it's the opposite, right? We're like, we want to get your butt away from the tractor seat into the barn. We want to turn that barn into like an operations center.
So butts in barns.
Exactly, right? It's an operations center for the farm, right? But at the same time, our goal is farming is extremely intensive in terms of the time that it takes these days. It's very dull in terms of the amount of kind of operations that you're running, and which is why we don't see the new generation being excited about farming, right? So to answer your question, if we can build a technology hub in the barn, and if you can manage all of these automation technologies that are out in the farm, I think we can really transform farming. We can make it more profitable. We can attract the next generation of talent, the next generation of farmers to be excited about farming, and make that and have them be in the barn and be more productive, at the same time create the kind of food that we are all happy about eating and feel good about eating.
It's so funny because this switch is happening at roughly the same time that we're all switching to electric cars on the roads. But the same switch that happened back whenever we switched from horses and oxen to tractors, there were detractors of the tractor. There are people who thought you shouldn't have a tractor, you should be using horses or whatnot, and now we're probably going to be seeing the same thing with people saying, oh, why are you going electric? But the benefits that you're pointing out in terms of economics, in terms of carbon footprint, are huge. Now, one question that I have is, let's say I'm running an organic farm and I have to do all of these operations, as you mentioned, and the carbon footprint goes up, but I'm also driving a diesel tractor up and down the rows of the stuff that I'm going to pick and sell to people. Is that something that anyone has done any research into of like, hey, what's all this diesel pollution do?
So I don't know that we know what the direct connection is with food quality. What we do know is that farm vehicles, farm equipment, produce 1% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. So essentially all of that diesel particulate that's also released as part of that, that has to land somewhere. It's probably landing on the food and the crops because that's what's there. And we're excited about the opportunity to finally create that side-by-side A/B experiment where we can judge a food's quality, one with diesel and one without diesel, and see what the difference is. Our hypothesis is that it's going to be substantial in terms of quality, in terms of yield, in terms of taste, all of the things that the customer cares about.
So let's talk about how your autonomy works in the tractor. So it's a little bit simpler than a car on a road because you're going to be on a farm.
And you're going slower.
You're going a lot slower. And as you said, you're going down rows of things. In fact, farmers don't generally have long sweeping turns or, a lot of blind driveways or any kind of, crazy stuff like that. And you're only going a mile or two an hour, I'm assuming, for most operations. So I think that probably takes a lot of the stress that some people feel with the word autonomy. You no longer have this sort of trolley problem of like, well, what if a woman with a stroller walks out? Should it hit the criminal instead? It's not there. These questions don't come up on the farm.
Right.
Yeah, that's that is
moral hazards.
Yeah, the advantage we have is it's a much more controlled environment. It's a work environment. So the number of people, how it's laid out, etc., is much more controlled. So we see the autonomy as an operational autonomy. So we look at certain operations and we look and say, how can we automate spraying? How can we automate mowing? So our approach to autonomy is very different compared to what we call an urban mobility autonomy challenge. However, we do have very different challenges out in the field. So the number of unidentified objects that we can come across in the field is different. There's a lot of them that are not classified with public data sets, so we have to do a lot of that work. The environment also is a lot more challenging. So for example, we are out, we have to sometimes go through the trees, right? This is not a problem that your autonomous car has to deal with. It doesn't have to deal with, do I go through the leaves and the brush, right? Those are things that we go through. For example, very often we also have to train our tractor to go through tall grass. It's very hard to determine what's inside that grass. So that's not a common problem that autonomous cars have to face, but it's a problem that our technical AI engineers and our autonomy engineers have worked on for a long time to kind of solve. So very different problems, but from a risk standpoint, absolutely right. It's a very different risk factor. It's a much more controlled environment. And in the worst case, we can bring the tractor to a stop and send an alert back to the farmer.
So let's talk about this data collection stuff because, I think most people, when they imagine the farmer, seeing how their fields are doing, they kind of like walk out to the field and they pick up the dirt. And if it's doing bad, the dirt's all dusty and it blows away. And if it's doing well, then the farmer, there's music playing because it's a movie, because we're watching a movie. We're very rarely interacting with farmers and I'm sorry, farmers, for watching. This is our interpretation. This is all we get to see. So what does, data look like in terms of an entire farm? You're essentially, what I'm picking up is that you're making a big spreadsheet, which is literally the farm itself. And you're able to get all that data together and put it all together and know everything. Like,
are farmers even used to that?
Is that something that they know how to deal with yet?
There's a misconception, right? That farmers are not tech savvy or they don't want to implement technology. That's not what's happening there. What farmers want is technology that makes a difference in terms of dollars and cents. And technology from that standpoint has failed them so far. So when they don't see the dollars and cents, they're not going to invest into it. So from that standpoint, farmers are looking at using a lot of drone data that they already do these days. They have been big adopters in the drone industry. They have also used a lot of satellite imagery. Both of these have given them lots of data. So they're getting used to working with data and things like moisture sensors and things. But the challenge has been that all of this data has been distributed. With our tractor, and since the tractor is used for all operations on the farm, it allows us to kind of bring all of that data together in a contextual manner, and we provide the most valuable data for them, which is weather data coupled to the vision data. So it's almost like the vision that you painted of them walking down the row and looking at each and every one of their plants, right? That is now possible with our tractor virtually. So they can click on any plant on their field and get a picture of the last operation that happened on it and what it looks like today, what it looked like weeks ago, months ago, etc.
All right, so I'm excited then because I'm not even a farmer and I want one now. So you have pre-orders of $500. Farmers can go put down a pre-order, but I want to talk production. If I'm a farmer and I put down a pre-order, what's my time scale? Like, what am I looking at in terms of waiting for Monarch? And what's your production like? How many are you going to be making and when?
We're going to be starting to produce them this year. Our first deliveries will be this year. What we're going to do is we're going to build a production capacity within our facility here in Livermore that has the capability of doing about 20 a week. And we're going to start delivering those to customers towards the end of this year. And from there, we're going to ramp, into the 2,000 to 6,000 over the next couple of years in terms of annual production capacity. Once we hit the kind of 2024 timeline, we see ourselves as being able to expand globally.
Does this mean that I could be a farmer anywhere? Like, could I be in Europe and get one, or were you just sticking to a certain region?
Yeah, for the beginning, we're going to stick here in California and Oregon, and possibly up into Washington as well. We recognize that a product needs to have great service when it's a new product with a lot of new technologies that we're putting into a new platform. So our most important thing is provide a high quality product, and if anything goes wrong, then we're going to be there to take care of it. We recognize that farmers have mission critical operations. We will not leave them hanging. We will be there to help them with their product, whether it's virtually through the screen on the actual product, or within just a couple of hours from a on-site service perspective. To do that, we can't sell one tractor in Germany and one tractor in the Netherlands. We have to expand into a region deliberately. But that isn't to say we aren't saying, hey, Europe, we're coming for you as well. Just give us some time, and we'll make sure that we can provide the same level of quality and the same level of service in just a couple quarters afterwards.
Yeah. Also, Zach, like along those lines, strategically, our product development right from day one, we have prioritized components, subsystems that have already been validated. So a lot of our tractor commodity components, right, like the axles and the gearbox and even the electric motor, etc., are all been leveraged from existing automotive supply chains or the ag equipment supply chains. And then on top of that, we have added our custom componentry and our custom technologies. But the fact that we have that in place, number one. Number two is we have a lot of existing ag equipment companies supporting us, both as investors and also in our production. Combined means that we can scale faster. We are not trying to build everything under one roof. We are trying to leverage the ecosystem, but we are managing the final assembly in a micro factory kind of a model that Mark is talking about. So what that means is people who are placing orders around the world can expect to see deliveries much sooner. They don't need to wait for us to build a gigafactory. It's easier for us to deploy microfactories, and also our partners are existing companies with distribution channels that we are currently working on leveraging. So that allows us to reach all these people very quickly.
I do want to pay some homage to my former employer, because the reason that these components are available and the reason that the ecosystem has come around for all of these electric vehicle components is because Tesla pioneered them 10 years ago. If Tesla didn't do what Tesla did, the entire automotive tier one ecosystem would not be available for us to leverage. Thankfully, because Tesla vertically integrated everything under the sun, we don't have to. So we're thankful that we can take advantage of the ecosystem that exists today.
Mark, could you talk about that a little bit? So, I mean, we constantly are talking about on this channel things that we learned from Elon. Elon's talked about how it's easier to make a prototype, really hard to go into production, and even harder to make money going into production. And so that's where a lot of companies do fail, right? A lot of them will come up with a nice computer render of some product, and then when they actually go to make the prototype, they fail, or when they go to actually mass produce it. So what have you learned working for Tesla that is helping you now with Monarch?
So I think the most important thing that I've learned from working at Tesla is that we cannot compromise on the product, meaning that our goal is not to make the best electric tractor. It's not to make the best autonomous tractor. It's to make the best tractor, full stop. And that was our goal at Tesla, make the best car. The other thing is, don't be afraid to try something and fail. At Tesla, we tried a lot of different things. Not all of them were successful, but the successes are really successful.
Now, farmers are probably getting excited, but also investors are probably getting a little excited watching this, because you came out of stealth mode. You came out of pretty much nowhere. And I bet a lot of our viewers watching right now are like, how can I get in on this company? So my question to you is, are you having any upcoming funding rounds that small investors could get in on? Or are you going to IPO so that we could get in on a public market? Any plans?
Yeah, on that side, we are very fortunate to be supported by some very big investors. The journey that we are on is not an easy one. It requires a lot of capital. And what we have is we have automotive companies that are supporting us. We have tractor companies that are supporting us and investing in us. We'll be making some of these announcements in the coming months. Our plans are very much right now to focus on meeting the demand that we're seeing. And on the investment side, like I said, we're very fortunate to be supported by some very big strategic investors. And as we go scale up, there'll be additional opportunities for investment like any other tech company. And we have to go through all those series of raises. And yes, our goal is to control our own destiny by going public and making sure that Monarch Tractor really defines the whole tractor segment for the world for the future. We started off on this journey because this journey was a fantastic combination, and it's a very rare combination of impact in terms of touching everybody's food. It's a fantastic combination of impact plus technology in terms of the latest and greatest in AI and robotics. And apart from that, the third one is the opportunity as well to transform global farming. So all three of them coming together is a very rare opportunity. That's what drives all of us here at Monarch, number one. And number two is it's a very challenging journey, but something that we're very excited about, because in the future, we don't see farming as a profession that people want to get out of, because that's what is happening all over the world today. We want it to be a profession that everybody runs towards. And we've seen this in automotive. I was in the automotive industry in the mid 2005, 2010 timeframe, when if you told somebody you were joining the automotive industry, they would question your career path, right? They would say, but we see that point in agriculture today. And we want to play an active role in making food more sustainable, making farming more profitable, and scaling it at a global level, and really touching each and every farmer around the world.
So I have one last question, and that is about government incentives. I am not sure if there are any existing government incentives for having an electric farm vehicle. Do any of those exist?
It's very much at a state level right now, Jesse. Again, this has happened before. I've seen this story play out in the late 90s, right? California was the only state in the whole wide world that had an incentive for an electric car program. And that propelled a lot of these technologies to life in California, and why we became the hub for electrification of the automotive industry here. On the farming side also, the state of California has some of these initiatives starting. But honestly speaking, we need more at a federal level. We need more at all the states level. And globally also, it's something that we are starting to hear more and more countries starting to take the lead. And as a country, we cannot afford to lose that, right? The reason we kind of led the world in automation and electrification was because of the push from the federal and state side, and of course the technology side from Silicon Valley. So we are looking for that same kind of kickstarting the transformation of technology in farming.
I think we're calling on the federal government to recognize where the emissions are coming from. The federal government has done something momentous in rejoining the Paris Accord, and we want to thank them for that. But what that means is recognition of where the emissions come from. Agriculture globally is responsible for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. 10% of that 10%, 1% is from agriculture vehicles, according to the IPCC report in 2010. Which means it's probably more than that now. The practices that a autonomous electric tractor can allow farmers to do economically can reduce 5 times that vehicle emission piece of it. And so in order for people to adopt these technologies and implement them into their farms, if the government is serious about meeting the Paris Accord targets, then we need more incentives, we need more support to give this technology to farmers.
Do you think that this has been a kind of chicken and an egg problem? I mean, if you're a lawmaker, it's very hard to be like, I think that we need to subsidize unicorn farms. And it's like, well, unicorn farms don't exist, dude. How are we going to subsidize them? Do you think that it was a similar chicken and egg problem with this, where lawmakers are going to have a very hard time saying, I want to subsidize electric farm equipment? And everyone goes, like what? Like who? who's gonna be doing this? I mean, are you the first step towards that? Because now lawmakers and lobbyists and citizens who are concerned about this, they can actually point to your company and say, look, there's a company that can actually do it. So then lawmakers go, oh, well, I better get my act together if I want to get reelected.
Exactly, Jesse. And that's exactly what we're seeing now, right? And that was a big part of our launch, and a big part of our company is to change the mindset as well. And we are hearing that not just from the lawmakers, we're also hearing that from all the global farm equipment companies. We have talked to a number of them, and they're interested in licensing our technology, talking to us about collaborations, etc. But the one common thread that we heard from all of them is we did not think electric was possible in this class without any compromises until you guys demonstrated it. And more importantly, the combination of electric plus driver optional means that we are not waiting for these subsidies to be in place. We will continue to offer this this technology, and the farmers will get the benefit of it even without subsidies. But subsidies are needed to accelerate the adoption of this technology, right? We really want to see this take off very quickly, and that's where they have a role to play. But are we dependent on them? No. Are farmers going to see value without the subsidy? Absolutely.
Wow, that's fantastic, and I think that's a great way to end it.
Yeah,
I'm so excited about the future. I've been so down about farming. I've just been kind of bummed because it's just like, well, everyone's got to eat, but I don't know. And I think a lot of people turn to like, well, there should be less people, and it's like, how do you implement that? That's a very hard thing to engineer. Of like, oh, we'll have less people. Now being able to say we can actually support more people if we just have more sustainable ways to do all the things that all these people need.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you guys part of the solution. I mean, I want to thank Praveen, Mark, and Carlo today. Thank you for taking the time with us, and thank you for re-exciting us into a new field of electric vehicles that we didn't even really think much about until now.
Thanks a lot, Zach. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Disruptive Investing. Be sure to like the video and subscribe. Click the bell button to be notified when new videos come out.